All right, every now and then a new programming language pops up. Some are elegant, some are practical, and some are just plain weird. Today, we're going to take a look at one of those, a language called Merg. Let's get into it. Look, I've been in this game for about 4 decades. I've seen them all, the good, the bad, the truly bizarre. And Merg, well, it's a fascinating specimen. The docs call it a highly opinionated language, and folks, that is the understatement of the year. So let's put on our critic's hat and start what I'm calling an inspection of the 10 things about this language that make a conservative designer like me just shake my head. All right, let's kick this off. Coming in at number 10, we're starting with something a little quirky. It's about something we developers do every single day: documentation. For as long as I can remember, the rule has been simple, right? You write your docs and you put your code examples inside Markdown. Merg just flips that completely on its head. Here, you're writing code and you embed your Markdown docs inside the code. The thinking is you're not likely to quote code within code, but this just feels like a solution looking for a problem. It breaks a universal standard just for the sake of being different. Okay, on to number 9. This one's about something every programmer has strong feelings about: coding style. Except with Merg, well, your feelings don't really matter. Now, don't get me wrong, I love clean code as much as the next guy. But this is something else. You take a language like Python, where indentation is absolutely critical. It defines your logic. It has a purpose. Merg, on the other hand, forces you into this super strict indentation style that does absolutely nothing. It's required by the syntax, but it means nothing to the logic. It feels less like a safety feature and more like someone nagging you to clean your room while you're trying to work. At number 8, we've got a classic missing persons case. A tool so basic, so fundamental to programming that when it's not there, you just feel it immediately. Yup, you heard that right. No for loop. A cornerstone of iteration in pretty much every language you can think of is just poof, gone. Instead, you have to use things called structural iterators and these little functions they call actoricitos. So a simple, readable loop that every single programmer on the planet understands gets replaced by this custom, high-concept abstraction. This doesn't make things simpler. It just adds a ton of cognitive overhead to one of the most common things you do in coding. Coming in hot at number 7, let's talk about something that should be dead simple: putting a tab character into a string. Just look at this. This shows the whole no string escapes idea perfectly. On one side, you have what we've been doing for decades: tab. It's easy, it's readable. Then you have the Merg way. To get one little tab, you have to break your string and write out this whole expression. This isn't just wordy, it's actively user hostile. It turns something trivial into a line of code you have to stop and decipher. All right, let's move on to number 6, and you can see how these ideas are starting to stack up. This next one sounds really minimalist and cool on the surface, but the reality is anything but. One reserved keyword: scope. It sounds great, doesn't it? Wow, our language is so simple. But what it means in practice is that everything else, every single definition, every import has to be attached to this one object. So your code is just littered with scope, scope, scope. Even their own documentation says it might be a bit cumbersome at first. All say it's a misguided stab at minimalism that just ends up creating a ton of repetitive boilerplate. Okay, now we're getting into it. We're moving from features that are just quirky to ones that I think are actively dangerous for a healthy code base. At number 5, we've got a feature that lets you be a little too clever for your own good. So get this. You can take some complicated function and just alias it to a single Unicode symbol, a power symbol, an inverted ohm, you name it. And sure, it looks kinda neat. But imagine you're new to a project and you see a line of code with 3 or 4 of these things. How do you even search for what the mu operator does? You can't. You've just created unsearchable, write-only code, which is a cardinal sin in any serious project. This isn't a feature, it's a landmine. At number 4, we have a problem with boundaries, or rather, a lack of them. A good language gives you clean abstractions. Merg, well, sometimes it shows you a little too much of what's happening behind the curtain. This is a direct quote from their own documentation. You, the programmer, can do something that puts the entire runtime scheduler into panic mode. Now, I guess I appreciate the honesty, but this is a terrible, terrible mixing of abstractions. The internal state of the scheduler should be completely invisible to me. This isn't a thin abstraction. It's no abstraction at all.
It's like driving a car where they ask you to manually adjust the engine's timing while you're on the highway. We're in the top 3, folks. And number 3, hoo boy. This is a design decision so radical, so against the grain of decades of computer science, you almost have to admire the sheer guts it took to do it.
I'm not making this up. These are the designer's own words. Need a simple data structure? Nope, use a directed acyclic graph. Need a key-value store? Sorry, use a directed acyclic graph.
So structs, dictionaries, maps, lists, tuples, all of them gone. These tools exist for a reason. They evolved over 50 years because they're the right tool for specific jobs. Forcing every single problem into the shape of either a DAG or a data frame is like telling a chef they can only use a blowtorch and a meat cleaver. It is a breathtakingly restrictive choice.
Okay, here we are at number 2. This is about ownership, a concept modern languages like Rust have spent years getting right for the sake of safety. Merg decides to take a very different road. And frankly, it's a terrifying one.
And let me tell you, I recoiled. In almost every modern language, passing data is safe by default. You either copy it or you borrow it safely. Actually moving it, transferring ownership, is something you have to do explicitly. Merg flips this completely. The default behavior is to move the data, or as they call it, reference stealing. This breaks the principle of least astonishment in the most dangerous way imaginable. It is an invisible trap waiting for literally any programmer who is used to how other languages work.
And here we are, the number one reason that I, as a language designer, just can't get behind Merg. It's not even a feature, really. It's a philosophy, perfectly captured in a single, beautiful command line flag.
I am not kidding. To use the language's so-called hazardous features, the stuff the compiler knows is unsafe, you have to pass the "trust me bro" flag to the compiler. Has there ever been a feature whose name so perfectly advertised its own recklessness? I don't think so. It's hilarious, don't get me wrong, but it also shows a deeply unserious approach to the very safety the language claims to care about. It's the ultimate punchline.
So after all that, after this whole takedown, you'd be right to think, okay, this language is just a complete disaster, a failed experiment. But is it really that simple?
The thing is, no. Merg isn't a disaster, because it was never trying to be the next Python or C++. It's not for general-purpose programming. It's a domain-specific language, built by one person for one extremely specific task, building Web 3.0 bots on something called the Indineo stack. And in that very narrow context, all these flaws suddenly become highly opinionated choices for a very specific user. So would I ever use it for a project? Absolutely not. Not in a million years. But is it a fascinating, if incredibly weird piece of engineering? Without a doubt. It just goes to show you, sometimes the strangest tools are built for the most specific jobs.